Hi everyone, welcome to the IGD webinar that's going to really focus on self-awareness so that you can really be the best of yourself at work. Thank you, Robin, for the introduction. Robin's going to be here throughout the session and we're going to run for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. We're going to get you working with using your worksheets to really help you to understand who you are and being the best of yourself at work. So as Robin shared, what we're going to do is really look at being yourself at work as you. Before we begin, what I'd really like to do, Robin, is ask you to begin the poll. I'd like to ask everybody on the call, yes or no, do you have times at work where you experience that feeling of imposter syndrome? What is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome can feel like you're not quite kind of capable, or you're not quite the right person, or you kind of wobble a bit and think, you know, am I really doing this? Can I really do this? Are other people going to be better at this? So I'd just love to know, yes or no, if you go into the poll, do you have times at work where you experience imposter syndrome? So Robin, if you could just get that poll going, that would be great. So what I'd like to do then is really focus on being you. My name is Liz Villani. I run a company called Courageous Success, and I've created these this webinar for you, for the IGD, to help you to explore who you are so you can be yourself at work. Earlier on this year, we conducted a global study into being you at work, and some of the feedback that has come back is absolutely amazing. The first point I'd just love to highlight as we kind of enter this webinar is that 95% of people shared that other people would say that they were a different person at work to at home. We would say there's no line drawn down you on the inside that says this is me at work and this is me at home. You are you everywhere on the inside. The second point that came out was they want to share is that 67% of people feel like they can't be themselves at work. And there's lots of different reasons why we feel like we can't be us. But actually, when you're in balance and when you're really being you in a positive way and really self-aware, what you'll find is that you can definitely be yourself at work and be in balance. And that's what this webinar today is all about. The final point on here that this webinar absolutely is going to focus on and really hone in on is that only 25% of people actually know who the real them is. So what we're going to do in today's session is dive into that worksheet, and I'm going to help you using a process called I Am, your self-concept, to understand who you really are. So Robin, do you want to share the results of the poll?
So results are on the screen right now. 93% of people who voted have experienced imposter syndrome at work, with only 7% who have not.
There you go. Right, so this is what we're going to really focus on. Thank you, Robin. Let's get going. So let's talk about your I am. Let's talk about who you really are. When you say to people, who are you? They'll say, well, this is my name, my history, my story, my job role, my experience, my CV. All of that is in your head and kind of in your story, if you like. Who you really are is in your heart, in your essence. You're going to feel the same when you're in your 70s and 80s as you do in essence as when you were kind of 17, 18, or even now. We call this academically your self-concept, you, the real you. So with I Am, what we're going to do in this session is create a picture of the real you. And I'm going to use the worksheet and ask you some questions to help you to understand who you are. Because if you can really understand who you are, which is someone that's unique, that's you, it'll really help you with your self-awareness. It'll show you how uniquely you work. It'll kind of describe your self-concept. So what does that mean? Other people might not describe you as these things. You might not necessarily be being all of them, but irrespective of that, on the inside, this is what it feels like to be you. This is your I am. We'll look at the end of the session at your energizers and motivators. We'll have a look at how that might correlate to some of your elephants, and we all have them, and some of those more challenging kind of behaviors that often come back in our 360 feedback. And we'll look at kind of your natural uniqueness and reputation and how you can use the best of you and your self-awareness to be your best at work and to succeed and eradicate and really move away from that feeling of imposter syndrome. So what I'd love you to do is to grab your worksheet. As Robin has shared, if you haven't been able to download it from the email sent ahead or from the links on this webinar, pen and paper, old-fashioned pen and paper will work as well, just as well, okay? What we're going to do is create a table of personal I am values that describe the real you using that workbook. It's more important that you look at the workbook and listen to me than look at me. So bad hair day or no bad hair day, it doesn't matter from my perspective. The most important thing is that you're focusing on the exercise rather than focusing perhaps on my camera or the actual webinar deck. But I'll still have it up and going. You can click in and out to see it. So I've put on screen an example, a made-up example of a set of I am values. There are 10 in total. If you imagine that your heart is like an orange, what we're going to do is describe each of the segments. And each of the segments is going to have a title and a description. And there are some rules that I want to outline as we begin to do this. The first thing is that your I am, your self-concept, isn't your self-doubt or your need for recognition or wanting to feel valued and your kind of anxieties and those things. Those things are all in your head. We'll kind of deal with those separately in a different webcast or webinar, okay? It's also not your management speak or generalisms. It's not your labels, so you may have called yourself shy or introverted. That's not who you are either. You can take the supposedly most introverted person, put them in the right environment with the right people, and they're definitely not shy at all. So we don't want any generalisms and labels. It's also not your negatives. Your I am, your self-concept, as we're going to create it, is all good. The challenges come when we're not being the best of ourselves and we're not in balance. So you shouldn't be using any words that are negative or generalisms or management speak or labels or insecurities, which I'll remind you of as we go through this next process. So grab your worksheet and let's get going. If you open that up, what you've got there is an editable PDF. So when you look at page 2, you'll be able to actually type in words and phrases to this bottom left table. We're going to create a word cloud. So you can type in, and like I say, if you're struggling with your worksheet for any reason and you haven't been able to download it, you can grab a pen and paper and do it that way. But what I'd really like you to do is to focus on you in this moment. I'm going to ask you 10 questions. And I'd like you to write the answers to the question in this bottom left table as single words or phrases. And as we move through the 10 questions, try and have as many as you can. Try and fill up the whole sheet. You've got 80 boxes there. Imagine if you filled them all. The more you can fill, the more, the better. It'll just be easier for you at that next stage. So let's get going. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, I'd like you to type in to the bottom left, these different boxes here, 10 words or phrases that you feel describe the real you, okay? And they all need to be positive and they're not your self-doubts or insecurities, okay? So I'm going to give you a second to type in 10 words or phrases, okay, that describe the real you. So give you a second to do that. So just type into the PDF, or if you're using pen and paper, just write down 10 words or phrases that you feel describe the real you. Next question then. Think about things that you like to do. and they could be inside of work or they could be outside of work. What is it that you're getting from these? Write down at least 3 or 4 words or phrases that describe what you're getting from these. So it could be curiosity because you like learning. It could be that you love kind of sport and team play. So it's about being competitive and it's about having that real sense of camaraderie and togetherness. It could be that you're a bit of a sewing bee and you really like the rhythm and routine of crochet or something similar like that. So it's about reflection and calm and rhythm. Think about what it is that you like to do in your world and write down 3 or 4 words or phrases that describe what it is that it gives you. What are you getting from this? Using the table at the bottom left of your worksheet. Next question then. What is it that energizes you at work? And I don't want any reward being valued being sought out, those kind of recognition, positive feedback, all of those kind of things. Think about the activities or the behaviors and the culture that you are in at work. What is it that energizes you? Maybe it's a real sense of creativity or excitement. Maybe actually it's about, a focus to get things done. Maybe it's more about kind of team connections and feeling like there's a kind of bond there or a bigger mission and purpose. What is it that energizes you at work? And add words or phrases to the bottom left. Often these things are about others too. So maybe it's a sense of fun or playfulness or real sense of focus and kind of like, studiousness and nailing things. So just add words and phrases to your word cloud. My next question is a good one. Think about when you're really energized, when you really feel fantastic, when things feel really great, whether that's inside of work or outside of work, okay? How do you behave in those moments? Describe yourself in those moments. Add at least 5 or 6 words or phrases to the table that describe you when you're in that space, in that zone. Feels good, no? For my next question, I'd like you to go back in time. For some of us, this is longer than others, but think about when you were around kind of 16, 17 type age. Now, remember what I said about your I am and your self-concept. This is all about you at your best. This is all good. What positive words or phrases would you use to describe you pre-work when you were kind of 16, 17? Add them to the word cloud. Try not to double up, build upon them. So when you were 16, 17, positively, what were you like? Maybe you were the funny one, the joker. Maybe you were a bit naughty. Maybe you were a bit rebellious. Maybe you were very conformist and you really liked the structure and routine of what you were studying and doing at school or college. Maybe you were a bit hippie-like. You were the one that kind of was a bit cool and a bit easygoing. Use the words and phrases that describe you and add them to your word cloud. My next question, question 6. Think about people who know you really well. For a lot of us, that is people outside of work, but think inside of work as well. What positive words or phrases would they use to describe you? And add 4 or 5 to your word cloud. So maybe they would say that you were very kind and very caring. Maybe they would say that you're very diligent and focused and just kind of nail the detail. Add 4 or 5 words or phrases that other people who know you really well would positively say about you. Next question, we've all got to know our homes inside out, haven't we, over the last few months with the challenge of coronavirus. I'd like you to think about the favourite space where you live, your favourite place. It might be part of your garden, it could be a room or a cupboard in your house. But think about a space within your home that you really like, okay? And I'd like you to add 4 words or phrases that describe what you like about it. What is it about that space that you like? So maybe it's bright and cheerful. Maybe it's very ordered and organised. Maybe it's just kind of a bit of a relaxed, easygoing jumble, you know? Maybe it's quite eclectic. Maybe it's very calm and serene. Write words or phrases that describe your favourite space in your home and add them to the word cloud. Next question. We all have self-doubt. We've talked already about imposter syndrome. 93% of you have these moments when you feel self-conscious, when you feel like, you're potentially not good enough. I want you to step into those moments when you do feel good enough, when you're in that zone, you're not feeling self-conscious, you're really comfortable. Add 3 or 4 words or phrases to your word cloud that describe you in that moment. Maybe you're alive, maybe you're totally focused, maybe you're really connected, engaged with the people that you're with or that situation. Maybe you're quite loud and gregarious. Think about when you're not in that imposter syndrome, outside of work too, okay? And add the words or phrases that describe what you're like in those moments when you let go. Almost there. Question 9. We should be starting to kind of hone. You should have a fairly full word cloud by now, and I'll come back to that. I'd like you to write the opposite of the things that make you cross in your word cloud. So think first of all, without typing in the word cloud, what is it that irritates you and annoys you, that makes you cross? Some of us can create quite a long list, other of us not so much. And write the opposites of those things in the word cloud. So let's say, a real sense of kind of being rude, for example, or having no manners might irritate you and annoy you. So you would write good manners and thoughtfulness maybe in your word cloud if it's not already there. So think about the things that annoy and irritate you and write the opposites in the word cloud. I'm giving a bit more time just in case it's quite a long list. Finally, before we have a look at cleaning the cloud and doing some final tweaks, think about what's really important to you. What is really important to you? Add words and phrases that describe it, adding to the words that you've already got there. So maybe, for example, kindness is really important to you and it's not in there, or leaving a legacy, or making a difference, or having an impact, or just kind of being optimistic, or maybe even like a sense of direction or momentum. Use words and phrases that describe for you what's important. What's important. So all of you will have done that in a different way, and I want just to make sure that the you know, that way, if you like, your way is included in the word cloud. So if you've had lots of questions as you've been going through this and thinking, well, what is this about? Why are we doing this? Then you should have that real sense of intrigue and curiosity in your word cloud. If you've been very calm and sequenced and gone with the structure, those kinds of words should be in there too. So just make sure that the way you've done this exercise is also included in the word cloud. Finally, clean away any negatives. Okay. So just have a quick scout on your cloud and get rid of anything that you think is just, you know, is not actually positive. That your I am being your best of yourself at work with your self-awareness is about you at your best. We'll come to the challenges. So once you've now you've completed your word cloud, on the right hand side of your worksheet, and it's illustrated on the screen that I've got up as well, I'd like you to select 10 unique, distinct words or phrases from your word cloud. Try and make them different. So what we're doing now, thinking about the table that describes you, is we're selecting the titles. So remember I said your heart's like an orange. We're going to describe 10 segments, right? What we're doing is selecting the titles of the segments. So look at your word cloud and select 10 and type them into the right-hand side of your worksheet. And if you're using pen and paper, you maybe just circle them at this point. You need 10 really to have a good rounded view. So I'm just going to give you a second just to do that. So you should be selecting 10 words or phrases and placing them in the right-hand side. I'll give you some examples on screen if you're ahead and you'd like to. So on the left-hand side of my screen, you'll see there's mischievous fun and someone, you know, we've got a problem solver, so it's called Sherlock. You might have creativity or whatever. So you want 10 words or phrases and you write them into the right-hand side of your worksheet. So what we're now going to do is create descriptions that illustrate more about each of the unique words and phrases. So you should have 10 selected that you've typed in or you've circled on your pen and paper. What we want to do is really expand on these and create descriptions. So we're going to use, you can use words that are in the word cloud that are similar, which would be a really great start because those words you've moved through this process of describing you. But you can add your own words and phrases as well. But be careful not to add those kind of needs for recognition and being valued and generalisms and those kind of things, those labels. We don't want spreadsheets and things like that on your I am. That's not who you are. But maybe you like structure and order and logic. So those kind of things are allowed. So as you move through the worksheet, you'll see that there's another page following the one that we've been looking at. And you'll see a table that says my I am values. Before you begin, what you're going to do is you're going to preference rank the 10 words or phrases that you've selected. So in the left-hand side where it says heart under the column of value, look at your 10 words and phrases and put your favourite one in there. Okay, so choose one of your 10 and put your favourite one at the top here where it says heart, okay, in this column here. Type that in, or if you're using pen and paper, you can just start a table. And then what we're going to do is I'd like you to ask yourself, if I could have one more, which would it be? And pop that into the second one where it says 2 core. If I get one more of my 10 words and phrases, which one would it be? And ask yourself, which of these would make me happier? So you slowly add all 10 titles that you've selected into the left-hand side of the table, one at a time. Your favourite's going to be at the top, and then you're going to add, if I had one more, which would it be? If I had one more, which would it be? Until you've got all 10 written in this table here, exactly like I showed you before with that example. I'm just going to give you a second to do that. The preference ranking, those 10 titles. Favourite is at the top, number 1. Your least favourite, and it doesn't mean it's not important, is going to be number 10. And then when you've done that, we're going to create, I'd like you to create some descriptions. So in the right-hand side, excuse me, of the table, you'll see the space for descriptions. Use your word cloud to populate your descriptions. Describe each of these segments of the orange in behaviours and approaches and energies, remembering to keep out negatives and generalisms and those things. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. So I'm just going to turn my mic off just for a second, just so that you have that space and you can't hear my tummy rumbling as well, maybe. So keep creating the words and phrases. You should have selected the 10 that you've done from your previous worksheet. You pop them in the left-hand side in preference order. So your favourite you type in at the top, and your least favourite you type in at the bottom. You're then using your word cloud to type in different words and phrases that describe the real you. And if I pop back a couple of slides in the deck, there's the example that we shared earlier. So I'm just going to give you another minute or so just to complete your descriptions. Just one more minute. And then we're going to really explore you, your I am, to really focus on your self-awareness so that you can kind of reflect on being the best of yourself at work. So you should all hopefully have a table of your I am that describes you, your self-concept. It should feel like looking in the mirror from the inside. If you haven't had a chance to finish all of your descriptions, don't worry, you've got your worksheet and you can add and reflect them in your own time. You should all have 10 titles. So let's focus on what you've created and explore who you are. Like I say, when you look at that table, it should feel like looking in the mirror, if you like, but from the inside. You might not be being this person, and other people might not describe you as this, but this is what it's like on the inside of you. And like I say, there's no line actually on the inside drawn down you saying this is me at home, this is me outside of work, sorry. And there's a dynamic. So where you've got the 1 to 10 with I am on the right hand side of your worksheet and on screen here, you'll see that we categorize your I am into 4 different areas. And that's what I want to explore with you now, so that you can really, use who you are to be at your best, using your self-awareness. So your eyes are going to be drawn to the top of your table. We call this the heart and core. So you've got your heart value at the top and your core values, which are 2, 3, and 4. The reason that your eyes are drawn there is, quite frankly, you chose those to be your favourites when you created your table. So these are the things that make you happy. These energize you and motivate you. Unfortunately, a lot of us wait for other people, situations and environments to make us happy. And you're unique, so what's going to energize and motivate you isn't going to energize potentially and motivate me. We're all different people. So at times when you feel a bit challenged or stressed or tired, and we're all human, if you can create the feeling of the values at the top of your I am, that will really help you to lift your energy and manage your approach, because you'll feel good. But if you think about human energy, when we're in flow, we're all in balance, okay? And that's when all of your I am table will be in play. When we wobble or we get stressed and we're under pressure, including a wobble on confidence, and when we think, that imposter syndrome can kick in, we can pull our energy in, and that's where the top of the table tend to become our drivers under pressure. Most of us don't consciously manage ourselves under pressure, we just get on with it. So if you can really use the energies of the values that are 1 to 4 in your table consciously at those moments of pressure, that will really help you to be effective and stay you at work. The challenge with the top of your table, the heart and core, levels 1 to 4, is that we've found a direct correlation between these parts of you and your challenging feedback. So we can all overdo these parts of us. These are our elephants, these are our watch outs. So it's worth reflecting to think, well, what if I overdid these? What kind of behaviours might come? And then we can worry and feel like we are an imposter, and our confidence can wobble. And it can also be quite difficult to work with us in those moments potentially too. So being aware of what you can overdo, the top 4, in your behaviours and approaches will just help you to be even more self-aware. What we want to do is get you in balance. So rather than looking at the top of your I am, look at level 4, okay? So we call this the first wave. This is 8, 9, 10. Okay, if you look at 8, 9, 10, it's these parts of you that we found unlock the best of you. They give you confidence, you feel resilient, things feel right when these parts of you are in play. So in practical terms, use words and phrases, the energy of 8, 9, and 10 in your approaches to really kind of begin things. Anything you initiate, the beginning of your day, the starts of an email, the way you have a conversation, when that imposter feeling potentially kicks in, this is who you can bring to unlock the best of you and be the best of you at work. So use 8, 9, 10. These things are also the opposite. The opposite of these things, rather, are the things that can annoy you and trigger you. So if you come across people or environments that are the opposite of 8, 9, and 10, then that could really annoy you. Most of us don't manage our emotional response brilliantly at work. So if you can really be aware of what triggers you, and that's different for all of us, what annoys you won't annoy me, then it'll just help you to manage your energy and your stress levels and your emotional response. Finally, you've got 5, 6, and 7. This runs through the middle of you. We call this the central wave. We've found a direct correlation between these parts of you and your positive feedback. So this is your natural reputation. This is what people would say about you if you're really being you, positively in balance. So when you think about leading people or managing people or interacting with customers, or you want to go buy a new car or get someone to buy into something that you're trying to do at work, if you amplify and make really obvious these parts of you in your words and your expressions and your phrases, people buy people and they will buy you. So be you and amplify these parts of you when you think, how do I make a difference here? How do we really get this across the line? Okay. So your I am is just a picture of you. This is you, your self-concept, your self-awareness. Within the worksheet, if you move to that final page, and I've got it on screen here, there's a few things that you can do to explore your self-awareness even further. The first thing is to look at how much you're being yourself. So you can do it quickly now if you like to. You can type in the words and phrases on the left-hand side and give yourself a score out of 10 just in that first column but how much you're being yourself at work. Take each of those titles and ask yourself out of 10, how much am I being this at work? So I'm just going to give you a second just to do that one exercise. And if you're using pen and paper, literally you can just think, okay, if I take each of these 10 titles, these parts of me, out of 10, with 10 being high, 0 being low, how much am I really being me? So I'm just going to give you a second to do that. So type in the words and phrases that are the titles of your I am. And just for now, just the first column. Out of 10, with 10 being high, 0 being low, how much are you being each of these different parts of you? I'm just going to give you another minute just to do that. So most people will have a range of scores when they score their I am. What you're looking for is any extremes. So, you know, from an I am perspective, when you think about being the best of you, any score under 8 is going to need some work. A 7 is probably a notch, but actually any score under 8, you need to take some action. Make sure that you're not kind of pigeonholing any parts of you for when you have time or when it's appropriate. What we know is that all of these parts of you, when they're in balance, are totally appropriate and totally applicable for, you know, for being at work. You might think being playful and being a bit, you know, kind of out there and loud wouldn't be appropriate. But when you bring that energy along with the rest of you in balance, absolutely, we all love to work with people that are fun, okay? So try not to restrict yourself in that way. You're also looking for any extremely high scores. So any 9s and 10s generally could be being overdone and they can knock you out of balance. So things won't necessarily feel right for you in those moments. So it's worth reflecting on your scores. And there's other things that you can do in your own time that we've created for the IGD for you to explore further using what you've created in this session today. So let me just talk you through those things, and then we'll move to the Q&A and hand back to Robin. So if you look at this third column here, we're looking at how much you're being you outside of work. So you can do this scoring for any scenario. The final column's interesting. How much work do you think other people see these parts of you? You might be thinking you're being this person, but actually, how much do you think other people are seeing it? You might even want to ask people if they're seeing different parts of you. The important thing is to create some action. So you can use the worksheet on the bottom left as an action plan to make some notes around things that you will do to kind of lift your scores, but also perhaps some actions that you can take to reduce anything that potentially is very high that you might be overdoing. And then there's some space on the right-hand side of the worksheet for you to explore in your own time even further, if you'd like to. So the first bubble talks about your triggers. These are the opposites of the things in your level 4. So your 8, 9, and 10. What is it that annoys you? The one on the right-hand side talks about how you start conversations using your first wave. So if you take 8, 9, and 10, what would your typical mantras or phrases be as you initiate conversations? Your key motivators relate to 1 to 4 on your I am. These are your motivators. What is it that motivates you and energizes you? If you can find a way to loop from your number 1 value to your number 10 value, what will happen is that often you can just kind of regroup and ground yourself, so it'll help you with your resilience. So it's worth thinking about how do I create a strategy when I'm really being me at the top of my table to kind of regroup to the bottom of my table. So that's what this bubble here is for. On the left-hand side underneath that, what are my watch outs? If I overdid 1 to 4, what might those behaviours then be for people? And then finally, there's an opportunity. This says my management statement, but if you were really being your I am central wave, so these are the values in the middle of your table, what would you be known for? What would people say about you? What's your natural kind of style and reputation? So you can kind of reflect on that too, and use your I am to kind of reflect and kind of really be self-aware of your reactions and personas and how to really be the best of yourself at work. The important thing is that I would love you to know that you can be the best of you. The very best person you can be is yourself. And it's worth just taking a screenshot if you want to, or pause this, the screen to kind of take a picture. Remember that the best person you can be is you. So I'm going to hand back to Robin for the Q&A.
Thanks, Liz. What a great session that was. I hope everybody got a lot out of that and are now able to be their best at work. Now, as Liz said, I'm now opening the session for Q&A. So if you do have any questions or any comments, please enter them into the questions pane and we'll get through as many as possible. How do you dial up confidence or be more confident?
Haha, so that's a really good question, and the webcast that we recorded this morning is definitely worth listening to. So go back to those links on the IGD kind of the website, so that Robbie mentioned earlier, and listen to that. I think it's about 15 minutes. The easy answer, the quick answer to that is there's a few things. The first thing is confidence, dialing up confidence. The best way of doing that is to really be you. So if you look at what you've created in today's session, and you look at particularly 8, 9, and 10 on your I am table, the minute you wobble, really use these parts of you, talk through them, be them, and things will naturally feel right. The other thing is try not to use externals for your confidence. So as I said, as we were going through the elicitation and creation of your I am in today's session, you're not the need for recognition. You're not the need for feeling valued and those things. And instead look to yourself, tell yourself, become your own best friend. Remember that, the best person you can be is you, and create a really strong relationship with yourself, so that you are building yourself up. Most of us, if we had a best friend or a colleague that was sort of wobbling and say, oh, I haven't got confidence in this, we would build them up. But when it comes to us, often we don't do that. We don't build ourselves up. So build yourself up, and in particular, use who you are. And if you want a really clear direction, 8, 9, and 10 will get you going on doing that to help you with your confidence. Robin, I hope that helps.
I hope it does too. We do have more questions that are coming through. We've got probably about 10 minutes left, so there should be plenty of time. Would you recommend having a mantra to help kickstart you into being your confident self?
Completely. Definitely, absolutely, definitely. Do it your own way. What a brilliant idea. You've kind of created a big mantra today to remind yourself. So you can take photographs, or take a snip or whatever of what you've created and carry it around with you. If you're going to create a mantra, what I would suggest that you do is that you use the top of the table. So if you use your values 1 to 4, this is kind of like links to your purpose, your kind of why. So when it comes to a mantra, that those words and phrases that are in there that describe you, I am this, 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 and this, or I bring this, 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 and that, will really help you to kind of remember to be you. Definitely.
Great. Somebody here is wondering, they're working through their workbook. Once completed, what would be the next point? What should they be doing next?
Yeah, so a really good thing to do next is score it. So make sure you do the scoring that's on that final page, and you can choose different scenarios. So let's say, for example, you've got a decision to make, you know, as big as, do I take that job or that job role, you know? You can actually score it. So you can actually do some scoring out of 10 for how you, you know, which you would be and feel better in those scenarios. If you're feeling a little bit under the weather, or things don't feel right, or you feel a bit wobbly and stressed, because we all have those times, again, take your I am and you can score it. So that scoring section, you can make it your own. You know, it might be maybe even there's somebody that you're clashing with at work, or you're just not kind of connecting with. What you can do is score how much you're being those things, and then you can take some action to bring more of you. The points on the right hand side of the worksheet as well, you know, it's about making who you are conscious. So the point of putting words and phrases into the session today to help you to describe who you are means that you'll be more conscious of that. So a really good next step, if you haven't done it, is to complete the right hand side. But remember who you are. Be really clear on what it is that annoys you, triggers you, what it is that actually is your natural reputation to the center of your, you know, your table, and really use those things.
Somebody would like some clarification over what was said. You just he got as far as how to begin a conversation using my first wave, and it's the bubble on the 3rd page. So what was the rest of that? I think people are just taking notes as they go along.
Yeah, so so what that page is, shall I just share my screen again?
Yeah.
And then just get this slide back up. So hopefully, Robin, can you see my screen again now?
Yep, that's coming through nicely.
Brilliant. So so just to clarify on this part of your worksheet, so this first column here is about your triggers. It's the opposites at the bottom of your table. This one here that you've mentioned is about, if you take the words and phrases at the bottom of the table and you think about these things, if you can begin things through those energies, what will happen is that things will feel right. You'll unlock the best of you. So if you can almost craft a mantra, you know, a statement of how you would begin conversations if you were just using the words and phrases at the bottom of your table, it'll help you to practically use who you are to unlock the best of you and to set scenes and those things. The other bubbles, if I just go through again, the key motivators. This is about the top of your table. What energizes you? What makes you happy? This next one here is about how to really kind of ground yourself. So if you're really being the top of your table, if you could take a moment to really focus on value 10, what would that look like in practical terms to reground yourself? You've then got your watch out, so what you might overdo, which is about what if you overdid the top of the table, the top 4, and then the bottom one here is about your natural reputation as a manager or a worker or a friend or a colleague. What would people, if you use the center of your I am 5, 6, and 7, those parts of you, those I am values, if they really saw those things, then what would they see?
Right. Well, I hope that helped answer that question on page 3 to that person. I'm going to do one final question, but as I mentioned previously, I will send the other questions over to be answered separately. Somebody would like to know, what do they do if they're struggling to decide or discover their values?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that tells you something about who you are, first of all. So most of us are perfectionists, and we also quite like to control things around us. So if you are struggling to decide what your values are, my first challenge back to you, I guess, would be, are you trying to make this too perfect? And in my experience, when people struggle to identify who they are and make those choices, it's because they want it to be absolutely brilliant. The second thing is to remember that who you are in these terms, the best of you, is all good. So there'll be things that many people think are them and they're not them. So, for example, overthinking, lacking confidence, worry, anxiety, those things aren't who you are. So when you ask yourself, who am I? If it's those things that come to mind, just push them to one side and think, well, actually, what's it like actually positively on the inside of me? What do I bring to people? What do I bring to relationships? What is it that I love doing? What is it that I love being? What is it that I really like in other people? Because we also tend to mirror other people. We'll kind of connect with people who are like us potentially too. So if you're struggling ever to kind of think, who am I and what are my values? First of all, question actually whether you're trying to get it too perfect. Ask yourself, am I creating negatives as is my response about my insecurities and my my challenges with confidence, because that's not who you are. And then use words and phrases that describe what you love, the activities you love, the feelings you have, and what you bring.
Thanks, Liz, and I hope you're able to use that to help to discover your values.